It's always Christmas time here in the studio. I have been waiting for this one. I went out to Joshua Tree a couple months ago. Some of you guys know. Went out to see Arrested Development out there and see Speech. But I met a guy who really made an impression on me. When I got done with the concert, we went back and there was a little bungalow that we got to hang out in. And I got to, most of the time, true rock stars. You almost feel as if you're the fan or you're the audience. But when I walked into the bungalow, there was a guy that was there, and he was one of the biggest rock stars in the place, and he made me feel like I was a part of the band. He made me feel like I was a part of the family. We just sat and chopped it up for a little bit, and I tell you, the few words that he said, it wasn't the actual words, but it was the way in which he made me feel. He made me feel like, we were friends. I was a part of everything. And you can imagine, I was in the room and here's all these legends. And now I'm feeling like I'm a part of it. And he was just so warm, so amazing. And then to be able to find out his background, 27 years with Arrested Development, the only person that with the Arrested Development has played the drums, that's played the guitar and done front of the house. And in a couple of times, he's actually done the guitar and the drums in the same set. It blows my mind. He's started off with a blues background. He's from Atlanta, started gigging when he was like 15 years old. And just an unbelievable musician, played with legends like Taj Mahal. This guy is unbelievable. But the cool thing is you're going to meet him and you're going to be able to see his heart. You're going to be able to see his passion, his love for music, but not only that, but for people and the connection point that he has. So it's just my honor and my pleasure to bring to you JJ Boogie. So why don't we just get this party started?
Yeah, and this the vibe that raised us, made us, saved us. Love so strong that the hard times praised us. From base life roots to the freeway nights, we turn small grooves into launch pad flights. Yeah, this the vibe that raised us, made us, saved us. Love so strong that the hard times praised us. From base life roots to the freeway nights, we turn small rooms into launch pad flights. We begun surfing waves too low, made our own rules everywhere we go. Held tight to the truth that our parents declared. Anything is possible, the love stayed there. Now Rob's daughter ballin' on the end scene. Ole scene, Will's kids live dreams we never could have seen. This the vibe that raised us, made us, saved us. Love so strong that the hard times praised us. From base life roots to the freeway nights, we turn small rooms into launch pad flights.
Welcome to the show, Mr. J Boogie.
Hey.
Let me see it. Hold on for 1 second. Let me bring you in. Here, hold on for a second. I saw you head knocking there. Let me see. Hold on. I got you. What is going on there? I'm zoomed in on you. Let me see here. Let me go to
you could do on your end.
Yeah, I can zoom in, zoom out.
You got some of my wife's plants down there.
I know. What's up with that, man?
And,
hold on. It's great because technology works until it doesn't, right? So let me bring you back in this way, man. What is happening here? There's your hand. I got you zoomed in. Hold on. Let me see if I can zoom you out, man. So now I can see your head, right? I can see that.
But that's weird. Earlier, I was just sitting in front of my camera,
I know. What's up with that? How great is it? Like, okay, so when you go out on the road and you're setting up, you've done front of the house. We're going to get this video part taken care of. But you go front of the house and you're setting up and you think everything works and then it doesn't. What do you do when you're live at a concert and maybe guitar goes down, drums go down? What do you do, JJ?
What I do is I blame it on the drummer. I look at him on this thing. Hey, there've been times where I've had try not to have a panic attack, but it's happened so many times now. It's just like, you just try to fix it yourself as fast as you can, and then move on with the show. Not let it rock you, not let it steal your joy in the moment. And there've been times where I've let it really hurt my heart during the show, where I want to be there to give to the people, and then all this technical things get in the way. And I'm like, why? It was working fine at sound check, and then now everything's a disaster. But similar thing, my first time that happened as front of house happened in my first time in Italy. We were in Milan just a few weeks ago, and I've been all over Europe a million times, but for some reason I have not been to my ancestors' place of Italy, and I finally got to go, and it was only for a few hours, but right at the top of the show, we kicked off the music, and Speech started rapping. And then he realized, oh, his in-ears aren't working, and anyway, so me and the other engineer, the Italian engineer there, I'm like, well, hey, did you reset the board? And he's like, no, you turned on your iPad. I'm like, okay, well, that has nothing. I'm like, oh God, but we fixed it, and it was the audience was just so warm. They were like, don't panic, it's okay. But it was a moment where we started the show, and then we had to stop it, and then I had to run to the stage.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dang, here I am in front of my people. They're like, this dumb American Italian, he ain't no real Italian, man. Look at him trying up, But we got it fixed, and it ended up being a beautiful night.
See, there we go. Let me take these off. Let me take these off real quick. So I'm going to do that. Now I've got you. Let me see if I can. Let me see if I can bring me in on this one, because you're like I was telling people, straight rock star. I felt so bad. There we go. And I'm going to swap these real quick. I felt so bad because when I saw your bio, JJ, I was like, man, what's going on? Like, here I get to hang out with the true rock star, right? Like, your bio, man, is absolute fire. Then you show up this morning, and I mean, you got the Outcast on, which thank you for that. And straight rock star. Hey, talk to me too about this. We were talking music earlier, and I know you had mentioned something about the during the pandemic, right? And there was fear. There was fear in people about like what is going to happen, what's going to go on. I believe there's another pandemic in music right now, in this AI epidemic. And when I say epidemic, I use AI, I have fun with it, I think these things are great, but I've seen that there's a couple of songs that are chart topping that are actually AI artists. How does that make you feel as a true artist that has been doing this your whole life?
Well, I mean, there are AI artists, like their entire being is a fabrication. They're not a real person. It's just a made up song was somebody. Well, who was the person that entered the idea for that AI?
The prompt?
Yeah.
It may, I mean, I guess I don't know who it is.
Because to me, that would be the creator of, the initiator of that, give that person the award.
Okay. Because they said, I was watching.
I'm joking. I'm being facetious. I don't, I think there's going to be some, the people have been conditioned and dumbed down to listen to music that have been so simplified and so homogenized and overproduced. Some people are going to fall for that, and that's what, it just plays in the background. Music, a lot of people, most of the world doesn't really care about music, not to the extent that we used to.
Yeah.
But there are still, obviously, there's still, I think because of big businesses running, non-musicians started, getting into the industry and running into the ground, not allowing artists to be themselves. But and then there's also, I mean, there's some subversive stuff, I'm sure you remember hearing about, CIA involvement in the, pushing gangster hip hop, and in the 80s and stuff, and infiltrating, certain things. So it's like, real artists have to compete with our government. We have to compete with other artists. We have to compete with technology. So we have a lot to compete with, so it's a very daunting task to, write, record, finish an album and put it out there, put your heart out there and have masses, accept it. So there's going to have to be a backlash against AI. When I see AI art, when I first started seeing it, it really looked demonic to me. It was like, it just had no, it was just, there was no life to the, I'm talking about just visual art, not, you
Yeah.
know, what here, I mean, I've heard some songs, I've had, clients who hit me up with a AI generated musical idea that they want me to recreate in my studio. They're like
Oh,
something kind of like this. They're like, I don't want to use AI, but I used AI to kind of come up with, the theme to their podcast, or, whoever the client is. I do stuff, make, music for people and stuff. And so when I'm not on the road with AD.
yeah.
But yeah, so who knows what's going to happen? But I don't like the top down kind of force of social change. I prefer it to be grassroots from people's hearts on the ground up, as opposed to top down. So
Well, you've been doing it since you were 15 years old, and the cool thing, in looking at it, you started with drums and then progressed to all the different instruments. I mean, obviously, you focus on guitar and things like that, but does the drums give you the bass for every other instrument?
yeah, that's my foundation for everything I've done afterwards. Without, without my drumming experience, and I didn't have extensive training, but I studied with some folks, and I studied with under a guy named Scott von Ravensburg, who was the drummer for Ray Charles for like 5 years, from like 1980 to 85 or something like that.
Uh huh.
And because I was self-taught initially, and I started gigging at 15, so I was just playing in the clubs and biker bars and stuff, like rough places, and I had a really crude technique, and I started developing hand problems. So I found Scott. He was playing in a local jazz bar around the corner from where my parents live, and I would pop in, and they would let me sit in with the jazz band, and I would, sing a song and play a tune, and became friends with that trio. And anyways, he would do all these weird exercises where he would get like a rubber band, and I would switch to traditional grip, like the old jazz style, and he would put this rubber band in there to hold my hands in a certain position, and I would just have to, do these turns. I don't have, my sticks are over there, but I'd have to do these specific exercise, stuff, weird stuff like that, and to retrain myself, and so I did that for a while, and I was playing in blues bands, and I got my first guitar when I was 16, but because I wasn't allowed to play drums past 7:30 at night because it's too loud. My neighbors could hear, the neighbors next door could hear the drums.
Yeah.
So I would play drums on my bed. I would set up pillows, and I'd have like tom pillows that were small and round ones, and I'd have square ones for like the floor tom, and then I'd play my I had a little boom box, so I'd play some CDs and I'd play along. But after a while that got boring. I wanted to play a real instrument, and I always loved piano. I took piano lessons, but I couldn't improv, and I didn't take the time to study piano enough to improv. So, but with guitar, I don't know why, I just started doing that, and in my room, it allowed me to at least have another outlet at night without bothering anybody. And then when I started, going all these blues jams, I was playing, I was hosting blues jams around Atlanta, playing all these blues bands, and there's always guitar players sitting in, always other drummers coming in, because it's a community of musicians. So I would let a drummer, my friend, Larry, would come up from another blues band, or Greg Baba from King Johnson, and he would come up. We would let him. I would let him use my drums, and then sometimes I would hop on guitar, and so we would start swapping around, just having fun, and then after a while, I started taking it seriously, and a lot of the local guitar players didn't like that. They were like, "Hey, stick to the drums. We got enough guitar players." But there was a few local guys like Mudcat, Danny Dudek, Mudcat. He was my band leader in one of the blues bands I was in, the one that I did some shows with Taj Mahal with, and a bunch of other elderly blues artists that have a long lineage and ties to like first generation blues artists from Piedmont style blues. And he was real, like, he wasn't threatened at all. He was like, "Man, play your ass off," And I'm like, "Yeah." So he was very, just pushed me to do it. He wasn't afraid of me doing it. He wanted me to play drums still. I got to hop back on there, but he encouraged me to get better, and it was awesome. So having a few guys like that was really great for me. And then, I started, met Speech, and met him at church, started playing in the church band there, and then started working in the studio with Speech. And then that took on a whole different type of production. Now
Yeah.
I'm like learning, like I'm going from blues, improv to writing parts, speech. In the beginning on guitar, I didn't really know the scales. I didn't know anything. I had to learn that later. Drums, I played naturally. I could hear something on the radio and be like, oh, I know what they're doing. But I couldn't hear something on the radio and be like, oh, I know that's in the key of E minor and they're playing a G and this and that. No, I couldn't do that. I could still barely do that. I mean, but I've studied guitar enough now to finally feel like, oh, I feel confident. But now that right when I got to that point, I switched to doing front of house sound. So, which is funny, like, when I get to the point where I'm like, man, this is the most confident I've ever been as a guitarist, and I finally feel like a legit guitar player. It's taken me a long time to switch my identity from a drummer to a guitar player. I was always the drummer that just kind of was playing at guitar, and then after 20 years of playing with a Grammy-winning hip hop band, I forget who it was, some musician on the road was like, hey, you could call yourself a guitar player now. You're official. You're an actual professional now. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. I guess you're right.
So take me back
So
to
it
that
just messes
15.
with my mind. It's just a mental thing.
Take me, JJ. Take me back to that 15-year-old time. I mean, you're gigging in clubs. Like, how are you selling this to your parents? Because if my daughter
my gosh.
now,
No.
my daughter is 16. If she tells me she's gigging in a jazz club right now, I'm excited. Hopefully Uncle JJ is there. You know what I'm saying? But how does this go down?
My dad would drive me to the gigs. My first band I was in, it's called the Doo-Wops. I was 15 years old. My uncle Freddie was on guitar. They all worked at my uncle's sign shop. My uncle had the largest sign shop in the state of Georgia since 1968, multi-signs. And my mother worked there, my father worked there, my uncle worked there. All these people I knew worked there I knew them all from company picnics. There was musicians that worked there. A guy named Larry Jermaine was a bass player. He was a white dude that had this glorious afro, and then he had this just thick Tom Selleck mustache, and he and my uncle wanted to start a band, and my uncle knew I was starting to play drums, and he was like, hey, my nephew could play drums, and won't we have him come out to a rehearsal? So my dad wanted to hear me. He said, hey, let's give him a chance. He was tired of hearing me play in the just the garage. Let me play with some real musicians. So he drives me over to Larry's house, and his wife makes this coffee she puts like a scoop of butterscotch ice cream in it for the creamer, hands it to me, and I'm like, wow, this was band rehearsal. I'm like, I like this, and I set up my drums, and we're all this gear set up, and I'm nervous, and Larry's like, all right, we're gonna do a song called LaGrange. It's a shuffle. It's by ZZ Top, and it's like dun 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 dun, and it does this rim shot. And I'm like, shuffle? What's a shuffle? I didn't even know what a shuffle was. But when I asked, Larry said, a shuffle like. So he's just mouthing me. So I just start playing it on the drums. I'm like, oh yeah, I think I've heard this song before, on the radio, but I didn't have the record. I'm just a little kid, and so next thing you know, we're playing LaGrange. And we start playing this classic, and we do that, and we do some Knocking on Heaven's Door, and then we did some Hendrix Along the Watchtower. So we were doing and then we did some 96 Tears. I don't know if you remember that from the 60s. It has this little cheesy organ sound. But it was like a cheesy 60s song. And then we do spooky, we do all these 60s and 70s classic rock and blues, and that was my introduction. So I started learning those tunes, and I'd go out and I start gigging them. A year later, or about half a year later, whatever. Actually, when I turned 16, I got my own license, so my dad didn't have to drive me to the gigs anymore. He, so I would go out. I would, be playing clubs. Back then I had facial hair, so they didn't. Since I was with the band, they didn't think to check my ID, so I would just walk in with the band because all the rest of the band are older. and I just blended in. And but my first show, my very first gig with this band, it was right before my first drum solo, my first public drum solo. We're playing all on the Watchtower, and we're getting after the guitar solo. I'm getting ready to do my part, and this drunk dude runs up, grabs the microphone, and just starts like yelling in the mic. And so Mike, the guitar player, grabs the dude, pushes him back. He's like, "Oh no, you can't do that." The dude pushes my guitar player back, grabs the mic. Mike is like he's an ex Vietnam vet. He takes his guitar off, and as he's taking them off, he knocks his glasses off his face, and he cocks the guitar back like he's swinging it like a baseball bat. And he's like, "Ugh." And as he's coming forward, my dad runs and dives like his softball, like he's playing shortstop, like normal, like he did in the 80s. He runs and dives on both of them, just knocks them down onto the ground. The whole music comes to a stop, and I stop the drums. I'm like, "What the heck?" And then the management comes in, kick the dude out, right? We settle down, come back in. We're like, "All right, we're going to start the song back over." So we start the song all over again. My nerves are shot, this time. And I did the drum solo, and I felt like it was like horrible, and then we did the whole rest of that. But that was my first professional gig. That's what happened right before my drum solo. But I was like, "Hey, welcome to show business," Right. Sorry if I went off on a tangent.
No, I love it. That's why we're here, man. Like when you first started off, did you realize, like in your head at 15 when you're drumming and you're doing it in your room and you got your pillows and your neighbors are mad at you because it's too loud or whatever it is, are you saying in your head like, this is what I want to do, or are you just doing it because you love it?
Both. One of my company picnics, I had one of my uncles down in Florida owned an Italian restaurant named CDB Italian Restaurant in Tampa, and it got really big and he had all these employees, and once a year he'd have these company picnics, and the first one he had, I was about 5 years old, and he hired this band. This is in the late 70s, and he hired this band called Beat Street. It was a local Tampa band, and they were playing like Steely Dan and all the pop stuff of the late 70s. And I was sitting on a bale of hay, just I got my mom still has the 8mm footage and the camera, the Kodak, photos of it. And I got like straight hair, little bowl cut, little boy. I didn't participate in any of the activities that day. That music, feeling that speakers hit me in the chest and hearing them sing, it just was like, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. And the drummer gave me his sticks after the show. And I kept those sticks for like all the way up till I was like 17 or 18. And then once I moved into my first apartment, I lost track of where they ended up going. But I kept them forever because they were a memory of inspiration, He was so kind to me after the show and took the time to talk to me. And I was just a little dumb kids, like, so, what was your question again?
Well, I was just asking, I mean, you answered it because you were talking about
yeah,
when you were a kid and was it something that you just loved or was it something that you wanted to do? And also too, like, did you keep that spirit? Because I felt that spirit in you when I got to see you guys live. And
yeah.
I tell you, it was that you guys tore the roof off of Pappy and Harriet's. It was unbelievable. But I think the thing that hit me the hardest that night, seriously, is what I said in the introduction, is I got back into the bungalow and you weren't a rock star. Like you were JJ Boogie, but you were Jason that was an incredible guy, and you made everyone else feel, there was other people that I watched you with, and you made the other people feel like they were the stars. Where did that come? Did that come from experiences that you had that people kind of modeled that? Or, where's the humility? How have you been able to keep it?
Oh man, that's well, I think I come from a background where I think anytime my father was an alcoholic growing up. So I was always the one kind of helping my mom, helping clean up mess. He was never violent or anything like that, but it caused a lot of turmoil in the house for years, and my mom ended up being she was more violent than, because she made him so angry, but having that trauma as a kid and developing this codependent mental feedback loop of behavior. It's like a coping mechanism, a way to survive, and I would always look for things to fix, kind of like I want to make my mom happy and make my dad happy and make sure everything, because everything was like anything could blow up at any point, and I think, and then, that's kind of a nucleus of it, of being a caretaker, because I ended up having, feeling like I had to save my mom, save my little sister, try to save my dad, and this is the complex I had, put on myself, and it affected me, later in life, that's something I had to deal with, but that, and then, becoming a Christian and learning, being a servant, having the heart of a servant. And I've always liked to try to help people, and so make people, being hospitable. I'm also a Sicilian and Italian, so we have guests over. It's like, hey, you want some food? You want something to drink? Have a seat. Put your feet up. I like people to be comfortable. Like, and I know, I've been in the business a long time. I know when guests are backstage, and I've been a guest in other huge bands backstage where I'm like, man, I'm a little uncomfortable, but I want to see my hero. I want to meet my hero, and I got my little backstage pass on, and people make me feel at home. And, I'm just like, hey, this backstage is basically our home away from home. Like, this is where we put our personal belongings, our passports are there, so it's like, you want to keep an eye, you got to be careful who you let back there. But at the same time, I like for people to be comfortable, because it just makes the whole environment more relaxed. And I just, I just try to be, friendly to people, and one person at a time, but we never know what people are going through in their everyday lives. Yeah. There was a woman there, going through cancer, dying of cancer, who didn't have much time to live. There's, and she's there partying her butt off and having the time of her life, and, so you just never know what kind of day someone has had, so it's like, if I could, make someone feel loved at some small level, I want to do that, no matter where I am, where I go.
You're speaking to Spike too, am I correct? Because I was, are you talking about
Yes.
Spike?
Yes, Spike.
Because I got a chance to spend some time with her, and that night, it was the first time that I got to meet her, and she's an absolute legend. But it was so amazing too with her, and you probably saw this too. She was honestly shining light on every other person that was there. And her joy for life, man, was unreal, unbelievable. Is it? Is her lady? Is it Allie?
I can't remember.
I believe it is. But
super sweet too. Yeah.
Super amazing. Hey, I was at my daughter's open mic for her choir last night. So she does show choir. So they, sing, dance, do all this stuff.
Yeah.
I thought of you last night because your stage presence is unbelievable. Like, I love rock stars, meaning that, like, when I say a rock star, like, not everyone who plays an instrument or in a band or even touring or very successful in music, to me, is a rock star. You're a rock star. Like, when I saw you on stage, like, your presence, like, it wasn't a performance. It was just flowing through you. To those kids last night, I could see, I mean, my daughter's 11th grade, and she's now starting to sing. She's starting to feel it a little bit. Some of the kids were starting to feel it, but I could feel that they were kind of holding back a little bit because they were wondering how they were going to be perceived. If you were speaking to those kids, like Carlsbad Choir, right, and they're going to open mic because they do it every once a month, what would be your advice to them to start to own that part of it and to sit in? Obviously you do every night and you're on tour and things like that, but how does a person develop it, or is that also something that's born in?
I think there's some people it definitely comes more natural, where they just got it right off the bat, and they'll, and then other people you have to learn to hone in on that attitude and that confidence, despite of what it sounds like or feels like on stage, because a lot of times the audience is hearing one thing and the artist is hearing another during the performance. Sometimes our mixes aren't good, so we're distracted, but we're trying to smile at the same while we're performing. But that's a little bit different. For people like new trying to get up, it's like, for kids, it's like, I've seen my kids dance around the living room when they were little, and with no inhibition, just free, and So I know what they could do from their heart, when they want to. So I would tell people, it's like, when you do that, when you're by yourself, it's like you gotta focus on that energy and try to do that during your performance. You got to throw your heart into that performance, as if nobody's watching, and you're doing it because you absolutely love it, And that's why, I mean, I play music because that's what I absolutely love to do. It's one of the most joyful things on the planet, besides making love to my wife, obviously, but music, yes, music, yeah. And it bit me. I told you the story about sitting down there now,
Yeah.
sitting in front of that band, and and just feeling it. My parents took me to see, my dad took me to see Billy Joel in the 70s at the Omni in Atlanta. Took me to see Stevie Wonder. Took me to see Santana in the 80s, and that was the first time I had like a spiritual experience at a concert. Like I felt like angels were surrounding me that night. Like I was like never ever experienced anything so beautiful and magical in my life. And grew up with the Abraxas record in the first record, and because my dad had that stuff. We didn't have iTunes, kids, back in the day, or Spotify, where you could just have thousands of anybody you want at any time, of any genre. Whatever was in your parents' collection, and that's what you got. That's what you were stuck with, unless you had a radio that got a channel, one or two channels, and you would have to spin that dial to find something. Good luck.
And you have to wait. You have to wait for your song to come.
Wait through commercials. Yeah.
And you have to put the tape on top of the cassette. Remember, so you would push record and play at the same time to be at the.
I was just about to tell you. Me and my that's so funny, man. Yeah, me and my sister had the little Panasonic recorder, and we would put the tape in, and we had a show called Rock and Roll City, and we would pretend to be radio disc jockeys. So, and we would do these mock interviews. Hey, welcome to Rock and Roll City. I got this guest so-and-so, and she's and then I would ask her stupid questions, and then we'd cut to a commercial, and then we would act out the toothpaste commercials, and and it was a riot. My both our voices are like 2 octaves higher, because we're like 10 years old. She was like, 7 at the time. And I still have the cassette tape, from those days. But I used to record the radio. I used to record songs. So whenever a song came on that I did like, I would record it. And so I found, 30, 40 minutes of me, recording 1999, yes. Prince, and recording Tina Turner and the Pointer Sisters. And, yeah, so I still got those tapes, and I still listen to those. I listen to them now with MP3s. Stream it. The same artists I still listen to.
What would be a little practice? It seems like you got thrown in the deep end. At 15 years old, you start gigging. I mean, you have the basically the bar fight before your first solo, right? Yeah. Your first one. So you got thrown into the deep end to swim. Are there practices that young kids could do now that can start to build that? Like I was talking with a kid the other day, and he said we were talking about basketball, and he was having some trouble with his dribbling. And I said, well, a great practice is if you name your hands. So left is 1, right is 2. And then you go 1 1 1 1 1 2 2 2 2 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. And then while you're doing that, have your dad or your friend throw you a tennis ball, and you have to catch it, right? But keep dribbling.
Ooh, yeah.
And so that practice, I didn't come up with it, JJ.
No, it's okay.
I watched Steph Curry, and Steph Curry had said that, and then I started doing it with my son, and I saw his handles get better. Are there things like that a musician can do to start to gain some stage presence and start to gain them, like feeling comfortable, and almost seeing the audience, or having the audience, or seeing themselves the way that the audience sees them?
Yes, practice in front of a mirror. Get yourself a microphone, or if you have a hairbrush, whatever you have. Here's a little screwdriver. Whatever you have near you that could be that you can hold your hand, that could pretend to be. If you're want to be a vocalist, it could be. I used to get my mom's tennis racket out of the closet. She had these wooden 70s tennis rackets, and that was my original guitar. And then I had a little toy kit when I was 8. My parents bought me a little toy drum set It was the Buddy Rich signature series from Lionel Playworld, a little toy shop in Doraville, Georgia. It was no longer there. It's a international farmers market now. Anyways, so I got my first drum set from there, and I would play along to tapes, play along to recordings. So I would suggest putting on your earbuds. If you're a drummer, play along to records. If you're a vocalist who wants to dance and do movement, sing in front of a mirror. If you're a guitar player, practice in front of a mirror, standing up. Watch the way you move, look at how you move, record yourself, listen back to your recordings, play a lot with other people, you got to go out and just gig as much as you can, like find places to play, open mics. There's a place down the street that is doing it for kids. And they got chaperones, parents will chaperone. You could, and they have like, a little stage up there, and my friends, my son's friends are performing tonight for the fall bash, so they're going to go watch their friends play drums. And they, last time they were there, they played Jump by Van Halen, dun, 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 dun. So my son's, little friends playing the keyboards, doing Eddie Van Halen parts on the keyboards. I'm like, man, I played that when I was 10 years old. I was learning that on piano too. And now like kids these days are doing it now. And it makes me think of when I first started gigging when I was 15, I was doing music that was 20, 30 years old, and wow. Kids are doing that now. They're doing music that's 20, my kids love a lot of the 80s stuff, 80s rock that I play. And, they were flipping out over Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation record. Of course, my son, his name's Rhythm. So I was like, man, you got to hear the song. It's about you, man. He's like, yeah. And then my daughter was hearing the production on Black Cat and the lyrics. As soon as she heard Black Cat and the guitar riff, and she was like, what is this? She's like, I want to play guitar like that. And I don't even know who the guitar player is on the record. And then when my daughter heard Rhythm Nation, she's like, if I produced this track, I would be so proud of myself. I'm like, yeah, well, yeah, you should be. I mean, whoever produced that track made a hit,
Yeah.
So it's just fun reliving, songs like that I enjoyed at certain eras of my life. I span a lot of genres of music that I enjoy, but even stuff like in the late 80s and 90s, R&B and hip hop and stuff, to let my kids listen to that. And I got this video of my son listening to Check the Rhyme, by a Tribe Called Quest, and he's in his baby seat, and he's like, you see him like just going like this in his car seat. I'm like, my little boy's like 4 years old, and he's back there jamming, and he's feeling that bass and them drums slam, and I'm like, this is great. I'm like, I love turning people on to music, especially my kids. And now they're at the point in age in life where they send me stuff that they're listening to.
Ooh.
So I'm like, wow, this is cool. Like, this is interesting.
What are they listening to right now? That like my daughter turned me on to Arctic Monkeys, which I loved. I mean, I think that they're and are you a fan of Tally Hall?
Is he from the Arctic Monkeys?
Well, there's Arctic Monkeys, and then Tally Hall is another group, but they only did.
Oh, I thought you were saying a person's name, so I'm not familiar with that group.
Okay,
I apologize.
you need to check
I'm
out.
not familiar.
I'm telling you, Tally Hall was so crazy.
I'm familiar with Arctic Monkeys.
Yeah, well, Tally Hall was so crazy because you couldn't pin it down, and that's what I love. Number one, that's what I love about music, like that genre of music. But that's what I love about you as a musician, because you can't pin you down. You started in blues, obviously, and then you kind of go through the progression. You end up at a time in hip hop that things are changing. Like you're starting to see Arrested Development come through, which is a completely different sound. The Roots. I remember this, JJ. They played at the Santa Barbara Bowl. I grew up in Lompoc, California. The Roots opened up for Beastie Boys, but because they were so before their time, they actually got booed off stage because people didn't understand the music. When you're a pioneer like you are, how do you push through when sometimes people aren't understanding the music?
Well, yeah, that is tough. When you're in front of your peers, you want them to look up at the stage and be like, yeah, you sounded great. Wow, you're doing great. You sound amazing, and I get nervous. I did a show one time in BB King's in New York and Manhattan, and Nile Rodgers was in the audience. So I was so nervous. I was just, it flipped me out. But you just got to you just got to get through the show. But you just got to focus on the task at hand. Take a breath. Remember that you're breathing, and you're there for, you're there for a job, you don't want to mess up. But yeah, you just gotta, I think you gotta breathe in the moment.
Did you know? I mean, did you know at that time? Because I mean, obviously, you met Speech. You were talking about like 1997, 98. They had been out for a couple of years, but again, like hip hop was starting to change. You started to see like live instruments actually being played.
Well,
Did you know that
yeah,
you were at the beginning of something that was going to change? I mean, it really changed hip hop.
right. Yes. I didn't really fully comprehend the extent of it until, years later. Speech brought in the instrumentation before I joined the band, so that was something he had already done. And
Yeah.
I think, having that inspiration from, Sly Stone and stuff. And Speech's favorite ultimate artist is Prince. I mean, if you would
Hmm.
ask Speech, he'll tell you that is his, favorite artist. But Speech is also an immensely knowledgeable hip hop historian. Like he eats, sleeps, and breathes hip hop. So um but he was, a trendsetter with his vision, and for Arrested Development. And back then, he used to have the Black Eyed Peas would open up, the Fugees would open up for Arrested Development. They were modeling themselves after Arrested Development. And I heard will.i.am say this. I heard a Wyclef say this personally, at their shows and backstage, talking to Speech, and from the stage giving Speech love when from shows we did together. Like, man, we wanted to be Arrested Development. And Wyclef, he's like, the Fugees wanted to be Arrested Development, and here we are tonight. We were at the Cannabis Cup up in Alaska, and Wyclef just went off. And we were like, man, that's love. And it's just a beautiful thing that they were given, in that seeing that the massive influence that, Arrested Development had. But and then also talking to industry guys like Michael Malden, Jermaine Dupri's father, who was a big industry guy. We were at the Georgia Music Hall of Fame Awards ceremony a couple years ago, and he was just talking about same thing you said, how Arrested Development just blew the door off, just opening up the door for so many other artists and changing the game. And I think there was a big backlash because people started labeling Arrested Development as alternative hip hop. And we're like, no, it's not an alternative. It's just hip hop. Like, we're not an alternative. There's no alternative. It's like, why isn't the gangster stuff alternative? That's more alternative to me. If you're going to be, or whatever, alternative jazz. Like, you could go in so many different directions. Jazz, hip hop. It's like, why they got to divide everything, and it's just like, it's just hip hop. But we've done shows paired with other artists, and been in front of audiences who are like, weren't really that big of fans. Maybe had a couple fans, but we had to go out there and just rock it. Or maybe it was just the type of audience that only liked the hit songs because that's all they heard, and they didn't listen to the rest of the records, or they don't know any of the newer stuff. And bands that have been around a long time, it's like they don't want to just play the old stuff. We want to share the new stuff we're doing with you.
Yeah.
And we've been doing that. Like, Speech has been like hammering on it with like, 30 minutes of new stuff, and new stuff before coming out, doing a one from a classic. But in Europe, it's been, they're so much more open to that. They're like, just give me music, and they were rocking like the new stuff. They just start singing along. Like, okay, you want me to sing to this? Okay. Wave my hand. Okay. Yeah, whatever, same with Japan. The fans in Japan and Europe, it's like, you can release the new stuff and it's great. But over here, it's so much more like, nah, let me, Tennessee, Mr. Wendell, Everyday People. That's all we want to hear, and you start doing other stuff. They're like, okay, that sounds good, but I'm not going to dance until you play my song. Okay.
So what is it about
So sometimes
that?
you see haters like that, and we just look at each other at stage, and we're like, look at that guy. Like,
Yeah.
whatever. He's standing there with his arms crossed, like mean mugging. Like, why did you come to the show? This is our show.
Yeah. Well, I mean, why is that? Because I've seen it. I've seen it with Lenny too, where Lenny does a majority of his touring overseas. And then I was talking with Taboo from the Black Eyed Peas recently, and I asked him about, are you touring now? And he said, yes. I said, well, when's a date that I can come and see you? And he said, oh, no, we don't tour in America anymore. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, we only tour in Europe and we tour in Japan and we tour all over the world. He said, they understand the progression of our music, whereas America doesn't.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, I don't think it's necessarily like Americans. It's
Okay.
just the way that the business is, how they've set the culture here, and
Okay.
and how they've politicized everything else in life. It's just drowning out music, too. So that's why we don't value it as much, being drowned out by a lot of other noise that's being taking up our minds and hearts, that putting us in fear. But music has also been an escape, for me, growing up with an alcoholic father. It's like, I put the headphones on and put the needle on the record, and those are my times of peace. And so music was kind of a drug. It is a form of, it was a form of that, along with just praying. I would do that too. I'd pray while I listen to music, meditate while I listen to music,
So I know we didn't, JJ, I know we didn't have playlists back in the day, right? You were talking, I love that you went like this. You moved your hand when you went to put a song on. We didn't have playlists. But what was the playlist for you when you're going, because I dealt with alcoholic father and now alcoholic mother too. And I remember certain songs would free me. What were those songs for you on that playlist?
It would be Sly and the Family Stone, like the greatest hits. So I would put on Hot Fun in the Summertime, would just make me feel happy. That would be one as a young kid. But before that, the first song I ever fell in love with from my father's collection, and the one song where I asked him, it was the first time when he played something, I said, can you teach me, can I play that from like when I want to hear it? The first time when I was like 5, and it was My Girl by the Temptations. He had, my dad, I still have this collection. My dad passed away in 2000, but I have a lot of his vinyl records, the same ones that I grew up with as a kid. And it's this Motown box set. It was blue, had Marvin Gaye, Smokey Robinson, Jackson 5 and the Supremes and Stevie Wonder. So My Girl, that was the first song where I just would lay in front of the stereo on my little shag brown carpet in the 70s in Doraville, Georgia. And that would be my escape. That would just take me away. Like I had no worries. I didn't care what was going on around me. I would just go into a whole nother world. But so My Girl, and then Stevie Wonder's Songs in the Key of Life record, Have a Talk with God, just right off the bat. It was just, I remember when, I was 3 when that came out. My dad bought it immediately. Yes, that whole record, those are the ones, the real emotional ones. And then obviously Earth, Wind and Fire, a lot of the up-tempo funk. I would love the extremes of the horns, being the excitement of the horn parts. Just this frantic, like I would, as artists, I think every artist has bipolar to some degree or another, because that's the nature of our business and world. Hurry up and wait. You get adoring fans, and then you're secluded in your hotel room or your bunk, you're by yourself and you're lonely, and then you're in front of thousands of people, and then you're by yourself, and then and you're hungry and you're tired, and just like there's just all these extremes, and then when you get home, that's that other extreme where feels like stability and comfort. Not that we don't have comfort on the road. We have nice tour bus, and stuff, but it's still not home. It's still things that go wrong, and sleep that is not had that you need, and that kind of thing.
So when you get home to Nanya Na, I said it right? Did I say it right?
You got it.
Nanya Na.
Got it.
So when you get home to her, you perform, you're touring all over the place, thousands of people, jumping up and down, taking pictures, all the stuff. I have a feeling that Nanya is like, can you take out the garbage real quick? You know what I'm saying? Like it ain't like she's cheering when you get home with a sign and taking a picture with you.
I've already made like 4 fires in the fireplace the past couple of days, so she can have them in the morning. She, sit down, have a little quiet time from the fire, and yeah. But no, I mean, I legit, I'm a husband. I got to get home. I got to wash dishes, and I got to get back on my duties. Take it. I do have my 14-year-old son helps. So our kids help with chores, but we all have our role in the family. We take turns cooking and washing dishes. I mean, I don't cook nearly as much, but I do when I need to, and I do enjoy it. And the kids enjoy it, so that's always a plus too.
What's a song that?
Yeah, and then going back out on dates again, when I'm back home, and just spending that quality time with my wife and my kids, and stuff like that. It's great.
JJ, what's the song that rocked your world? Like your shirt right now brings me back to a time when I remember when Outkast first came out, Southern Playalistic Cadillac Funky Music, all one word, which I was blown away by, that you could actually spell that word in one flow. But it was Players Ball. When I heard that song, it made me feel the way that I felt when I heard Me, Myself, and I by De La Soul in '89.
Oh, wow.
What was like when you're producing music, you're on the other end, you're actually making music that makes us feel, which I'm going to tell you about one song that hit me so hard that you're responsible for. Does that still happen to you, or even growing up, was there pivotal songs that you heard that said, damn, that changed the game for me?
Yeah. I mean, to get really hit over the head with something from an artist that kind of doesn't happen as much, but I mean, aside from My Girl being something of beauty and groove and just that thinking, that longing and that voice, for the woman, and I'm just a little kid, I'm hearing this and feeling it. And then fast forward later, that I think the next time I remember being really taken aback by something was I got this cassette tape, Jimi Hendrix. It wasn't one of his regular albums. It was like a compilation record, but I don't. Killing Floor. It started out with live from the festival he played in Monterey Festival he played in 66 or 67, where that first time he lights the guitar on fire, that famous he's on his knees. And that's the first festival he played in America after putting together his band The Experience, and he was doing a bunch of shows. He was developing the act, and he's like, okay, now he booked this festival in America, and this is his introduction back to America. He's no longer a sideman. He's no longer playing, with Little Richard and the Isley Brothers and Tina Turner. Now he's the front man of his own band. And he looks down, as the Mama the Papa's there, Paul McCartney, and all these famous people, and he comes out and he does this Howlin' Wolf tune called Killing Floor. But his approach to it was like, it's the most insane, wicked rhythm guitar intro. It's like, it's like funk and rock and blues and everything all in one. And then the drums come in, the bass is distorted, and he kicks in his fuzz pedal, and the speakers sound like they're exploding. And it's just like, what is this monstrosity? It's like, so you got to hear it. The live version of Killing Floor from the Monterey Pop Festival. Okay. It's just, it gives me goosebumps. And that's from like a rock perspective, Yeah. And then of course, like Eruption, 10 years after that, 78, when Van Halen comes out, Van Halen 1, like nobody ever heard anybody play guitar like that. And you hear Eruption, everybody's cranking their speakers up or putting their headphones on. I remember just like being at my friend's house and putting on the record and just dialing the dial of the stereo and just watching the speakers going from his guitar alone. He was pushing this air, and it was just wicked sounds, So that was another one. And then, years later I got into jazz and, Miles Davis and, in a Silent Way record, which is kind of a precursor to Bitches Brew, which is kind of, he's going from doing that bebop sound to little bit more fusion angst sound. He's in that in between phase where there's still a lot of beauty and melody, but there's a little bit of groove and angst, but they just touch upon it. But it's called In a Silent Way, and I love that record as well. But earlier you said the phrase "pin it down," right? You remember? And I thought of a song called "Pin It Down" by Madison Cunningham, and she's the most recent one, and that record came out maybe, I don't know, I don't even know that, I'm not familiar with her catalog, but somebody turned me on to that song, and that blew me away. I played it for my daughter, and she loved it, and I played it for my son. He was like, man, and Madison is the vocalist, and she's also the guitarist, and she gets like some gnarly like sustained feedback notes on her guitar, and she's getting these wicked tones, and the production is just thick and fat, and you could tell the producer, like, the drummer's not playing very hard, but the producer was like cranking the inputs of like the console inputs or whatever the preamps they have. They're like driving it, and then so the instruments could play soft, but it sounds big, and you could tell how he produced it. And I love that sound with the drums, where it sounds like everything's on the verge of losing control, but it's still controlled, you know. But her vocals, her timing of her vocals, the way her phrasing is just brilliant on that. And I have no idea what the song's about, but when you said "Pin It Down," I thought of that. And it's just one of those kind of relatively, I don't know how well known she is, but that's a relatively recent song that has blown me away, you know. And I love discovering artists like that, you know.
JJ, yesterday I went into the fridge after being gone for a couple of days. I was out in Sarasota, did a speaking engagement out there, and I got home and I looked in the fridge, and there was some foil over the top of something. I asked my son what it was. He said, "Oh, that's Tina's macaroni." I said, "Well, Tina don't live in our house, so who are you talking about, Tina?" Like, I said, "Who's Tina?" He's like, "Oh, it's a famous chef, and Mom made Tina's macaroni." I said, "Oh, damn!" Like. So instantly in my head, I was like, okay, so she got the recipe. She made the stuff. I tell you, I had the macaroni. It was phenomenal. Like, I mean, it was on fire. When you go to make a song, right, is there a recipe? Like when or is it inspiration and a spark? So if you grab, because, I mean, you said it with your mouth, a couple of different riffs and things like that, you were able to, hit it right away. I'm not even going to try to recreate it. But take us through that, like when you're producing and you're coming up with the sound, is there a recipe that a person follows, or is JJ just like, the mad scientist that says, I heard this spoon hit the floor, so now I'm moving, and then I see the tree and the rustling of the wind, and then I make the thing happen?
It's not quite that mystical, I don't think. But I mean, hey, maybe it is for some. Even people use nature to be inspired, and they go on writing retreats, and get out in the mountains and stuff. And inspiration just comes at different times. There have been many times where it's late at night and I'm going down, I'm laying to bed, I just kiss my wife goodnight, and we're both down. I'm like, all of a sudden this beat starts playing, and I'm like, my eyes are closed. I'm like, and I'm like, oh, that's a cool idea. I should record that tomorrow. But of course, if you fall asleep, you're not going to remember that musical idea. So I remember waking up being like, I had this idea. Oh, I can't remember it. And I remember telling Speech, he's like, bro, you got to honor what God gave you in the moment. He goes, you could get out of bed, go record it. So what he does is he'll go into the bathroom so he doesn't, disturb his wife or whatever. And he'll beatbox. So I started doing the same thing. I'm like, that's brilliant. I'm like, so there have been times where I have a musical idea and I'm in bed, the lights are out, everybody's asleep, and I'm like, oh, I'll get out of bed, go downstairs and maybe find the notes on the piano or guitar, just record the melody for a second and go back to bed, and it's there, and then come back to that later, develop it, or, and then there's other times where like, man, I'm going to open up my studio, my DAW here, Pro Tools or whatever, and just start playing. I got my keyboard right here, and I just feel like seeing if I could mess around with some sounds, see if anything, comes out of it. And sometimes that works and great, and sometimes it doesn't. And then there are other times where I'm listening to a song, I'm like, I want to sample this section, this section of this 60s Latin jazz song right here. These two bars would be so funky over a fat beat, you know, and then I have to make a mental note. I'll email myself, sample such and such song, and then I have to go in and like rip it and put it in my DAW, and I start chopping it up, and then you know, so there's that way to do it. I've done that, and Speech taught me his method. You know, when I produced a song called Raga in Kulangata, and it's an Arrested Development song, and it's a raga, meaning I sampled Ravi Shankar, you know, who was a famous sitar player from India, and I was listening. We were in Coolangatta, Australia, on tours several years ago, and that's what I was just vibing out to. I was meditating. I was walking along the beach and just listening to the sitar music, beautiful Indian music. And there was a section in this one song that was just like so funky. Like that could be a hip hop beat. And then I grabbed these like monstrous drums from like a Billy Squier rock song from the Big Beat. Remember that song, Big Beat?
Yeah.
Like some big drum. A lot of hip hop artists I grabbed those drum sounds and I started putting it over this Ravi Shankar beautiful sitar. And then I started, you know, and I did it after Speech had just showed me his method for chopping samples in Pro Tools. He's like, because I was curious, I was like, how do you produce, you know? And he's like, man, he goes, well, in the old days, I used to do it on the ASR and I had a little floppy disk. And he goes, now, you know, in Pro Tools, I kind of put on the grid here. And he was kind of showing me in the hotel room. We were on tour. He was like, I was in his room and we just had hours to kill. And he taught me like how he does it. So I was like, now I want to experiment with that, you know? And so I created a song called Raga and Kulangata. And you also go to YouTube, check it out. It's a real fun.
I'll link it on song. This. I'll link it on this podcast too, JJ. How many, what my pops used to say is if it's simple, people will engage with it. Yeah. If it's complicated, they have the tendency to tune out. He was talking about business and relationships, things like that. Yeah. Does that cross into music as far as like, because I'm thinking about when you were saying a drum, when you said there's a drum beat that you heard the sitar, you hear this part of it, you're putting them together. In my head, I'm thinking ingredients, right? Layering the ingredients over the top of it.
Yes.
With your style or what you've seen to work as far as like something that really moves you, right? Is it the simplicity or is it the complex? Is there a lot of ingredients or the less is better?
Yngwie Malmsteen, famous classical metal guitar player, said, you know, there's the saying, less is more. There's a video of him saying, that's false. How can less be more? More is more. And he says that because he likes to play all those blazing, you know. He's like, no, more is more, you know. So that's his philosophy, and it works for him. But to me, less is more if that suits that particular song. More is more if it suits that particular song. To me, it depends on my inspiration in the moment, how I'm inspired in that day. There are times where we're working on songs where we have a shaker and all these extra sounds in the production. Then you start living with it and you're like, let me mute that shaker. And now let me listen to it for a couple of days. I'm like, you know what? I like it better without it. Or, you know, so, you know, me and Speech, and, you know, I know other artists do as well, is like before you release it, you kind of live with it a little bit. You know, you listen to it, drive around town with your demo, see how it feels in the car. Like, and then sometimes it gets to a section, you're like, you know, it needs something here. Something's off on this section. Go back to the studio. I think it needs a shaker here, or it needs a keyboard sustained, some strings or whatever, claps, you know, oohs and ahs. You know, sometimes you get to your ideas. You know, Speech has a lot of intricate background vocals in a lot of his productions. So, you know, you could tell he grew up listening to, you know, a lot of R&B and soul and funk and all that stuff too, because he's got, and he doesn't know any music theory. You know, when I used to go down to the studio, he you know, be like, I'll be trying to figure out this guitar part he wants me to play. And he could not tell me, oh, the song's in D minor, start on the 1, then we'll go to the 5, and then we'll go to the minor 3rd, and the 2. And you know, he can't speak, you know, music theory. He's just like, first note, okay. I find it on the guitar. There it is. I'm like, oh, that's a D, okay, or whatever. And then he's like, next note. And he'd just give me one note at a time, but he would give me the exact note. He had like perfect pitch in his head to where he was giving you the exact notes. And then he would give you the part to play. We would record it and he'd say, okay, I have a harmony for that now. I'm like, what? And then he'd go, and here's the first note of the harmony. I'm like, oh, okay, here it is. I find it on the guitar. I'm like, okay. And then he'll give me a whole set of notes. We'll record that. And then he'll blend those two together. And it's like this, like stacking vocal harmonies. Like he had all this years of stacking himself with vocal harmonies, of singing with other vocalists, that he was able to translate that to me on, certain guitar parts. Same with, piano and bass and all the other parts, he's direct stuff. And then he's, there's other parts where he's like, man, come up with something cool, where he wants you to do something cool. He wants you to come up with something, and then be like, yeah, that's dope. Maybe we can modify it, or man, keep it just the way it is. And that's perfect. So we're always just trying to do what's best for the song and want to keep the energy going, from moment to moment. That's how I think in production. Like as the song transitions from one moment to the next, is the energy slowing down? Is it increasing? Is it, is it running out of steam? Does it need something here? Or does it need less here? What are you trying to push and pull with emotions? That's what you're painting pictures with, different chords, major and minor chords, happy, sad, mysterious, angry, hard, soft. There's different ways to layer emotions, through sound and frequency. Being a mix engineer, also boosting and cutting certain frequencies affect emotions as well, and excitement. Dulling things make it warmer and duller if you want it to sound, a certain way, or if you need it bright, you need that excitement, like 70s horns, like you need more sheen on them vocals, or so it's all depends on what you're going for, what you hear as a producer. Some people don't know what they're going for. They just kind of put stuff out there. But if you could think about the, as your initial spark of inspiration goes, start thinking about an end game with it too. Like, what would this sound like as a final product,
Yeah.
And try to make steps, be patient with yourself. A lot of times I want stuff to happen fast, want this certain song or inspiration. And, I made this one song, it's called It's Star Time, and it's a MIA sample that I did, and I blended it with a James Brown sample. And when I first sent it to Speech, he was out to dinner with Yolanda, his wife, and he calls me like in the middle of the dinner. He's in the middle of this restaurant. He calls me and I hear all the noise, and he's like, oh my God. He's like, this is insane. This beat is sick. And you hear Yolanda like laughing in the background, like, cause he's obviously causing a scene in the restaurant. He's like, yo, this beat's for crazy. Yo. He's like just wigging out that I sent him this beat. Like he never heard anything like it, and it's this crazy, quirky beat, and I was so glad he loved it. And he wrote lyrics to it, and he put some sound effects in there. But there was, after a while we were living, we were like, okay, something's missing. Maybe it needs a bass line. And I'm like, okay, yeah. So I went back in the studio and I pulled up this fat, like just keyboard, like Stevie Wonder key bass. Like I was thinking like a key bass sound. And I started layering, I just came up with this real simple bass line, kind of like a reggae, like bombastic bass line. And it was very simple, nothing like anybody else would have done something really a lot, more musical or whatever, but it was out of the way, but just enough to make the beat hit harder. And I sent that to him. He was just like, man, I could kiss you. That's perfect. And yeah, so it was fun, but it's called It's Star Time,
It's Star Time?
Yeah.
Do you know,
that's
JJ, do you know when it's a hit? Like, and has there been times where you've known it's a hit and then it doesn't do to the audience what you thought it, did to you?
Yeah, like there's certain songs, like I co-wrote a song called The World Is Changing off the Strong record that ended up charting top 10 in Japan on the Billboard Hot 100. We were sandwiched between Mariah Carey and Usher at the time. And we were up there. It was only 2 weeks, but hey, I was like, man, I will take the 2 weeks. I wrote the music to that song, but writing it, I was like, man, that's a really dope song. It's very simple. It's more sing. It's not really a hip hop track. Like it's mostly singing on it. So it's not a whole lot of rapping, but Speech is a brilliant singer. Like people don't realize, like, yeah, he's an amazing rapper, but he's also just a great vocalist, like a singer. Like, I don't think there's anybody else in the game that raps as well as he does and sings equally.
Yeah.
Like there are other, I mean, there's like, Lauryn Hill, obviously she, from a female perspective, it's like, she's up there, she's top game, as far as being able to sing and rap. But it's like in the male game, it's like, who else can rap and sing like, the way as well as he does. And I'm saying, look, like go listen to his solo career too, like all the singing on the Hoopla record, and it's funky and soulful and like, whoa, but so I love that, but anyways,
how did I not know? I was telling you before, how did I not know the song Vibe with Big Daddy Kane that you guys did? I don't know. What year was that? Was that 2016, 18, somewhere around there?
It was, I thought it was during the pandemic afterwards. I think it was like during a little after the pandemic or something.
How did I not know that one? I mean,
I know. It's Big Daddy Kane. I saw him live. I was in 1987, 88 at the Omni in Atlanta. I was like, I don't know, 13 or 14. And
did your dad or your uncle take you?
My dad dropped me off, but I went with my one of my best friends at the time.
Did you have a full beard at the time too, JJ?
No, I had a little shadow, a little sideburn. I started shaving at 12. My first razor was a Ronald McDonald razor. It was red, and my dad taught me how to shave starting at 12. I had to.
Did you have that chin strap then? Like, because when facial hair first starts coming in, you get that little king tut. You know what I'm saying? Like you grow the little fuzz on and then you try and get the little chin strap like John B. back in the day. Did you have that?
It wasn't this. It was up here. It was mainly stash first, and then down in the sides came in really quick, and then I had like right here. I had a little gap where it didn't quite meet yet, and then eventually that came together. But I had a beard that was down past my belly button for years. I
saw that,
and I've just at the end of 2024 is when I cut it off, and I was going through a lot of spiritual changes and emotional changes and life changes, and I felt like there was a part of my ego that I had to kill. I had to I needed to start fresh on with things. My wife, we lost her father. My father-in-law passed away, so we were going through all the stuff with just all the dark stuff, dealing with the estate and the family and all the great stuff that happened with the family too. It's just everything. It was just a very emotional time, and just looking forward to the future. I'm 52 years old, so I'm just like thinking about what I want to do from here on out, and do I want to do some things differently and focus on on other things, and that's what I started doing. So but it's a whole big process, and it has many facets to it, and it's been awesome. And I'm just grateful for speech, because we've been needing a sound guy for years. We haven't been traveling with one for years, and our show is so intricate, and like the vocals are in and out. Like you got to know, like Tasha, speech, One Love, Farida. Everybody's got their parts, and then together they're singing together. I got to get that vocal blend there. It's like. I know the show inside and out. I know all their voices because I've lived with them the past 20 years. We've been in buses together. We've been in Airbnbs and hotels and planes, and I've watched them. Farida have her baby and babysat him on the road, and we watch each other's grow up. Watch Speech's kids grow up. I remember carrying little Zoe when she was a little girl, Speech's daughter, and we were in Barcelona, Spain, and she wandered off the tour bus. Me and Speech were in there getting some stuff out of the trailer, and there was broken glass, and she was barefoot, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, Zoe, come here. And I grabbed her, scooped her up, I put her on my back, and I was like, hey, let me walk you in. So I walked her back over to the bus and was like, put your shoes back on. It's like we're always got each other's back, watching each other's kids, and it's like we're all each other's uncles and aunts to each other's kids and stuff, and so. But I say all that because I know their voices, so I know how it's supposed to sound, and we've seen so many videos where the vocals were kind of unintelligible and not really on top of the mix, and the backing tracks aren't banging as hard as they're supposed to, and so I'm like, let me do it. we'll get another guitar player. We know cats that could do it. And yeah, it would be a big blow to my ego, but I'm like, you know what? I kind of need that right now. Let me step back and get off the stage. Let me get behind the stage and serve my family up there and make them sound amazing. Wow. Also, I'm a control freak. Yeah. So, when I'm on guitar, I could only control the sound of my guitar, but when I'm running in front of house, I control the sound of speech. Every vocalist, the keyboard player, every drum that's mic'd, the overheads, the bass, the backing tracks, everything. So I get to control the whole band, and then I get to push the low end. So I get to see my musical family who, I've been jamming with and I love musically. I get to make them shine. Like when the drums come up and then that tom-tom part comes up on Tennessee, I'm like, ooh, I grab them faders and the tom-toms. I'm like pushing them up. So they're like booming through these PAs, and we'd be playing these festivals and the subs are just like, woo, woo. I'm like, it's a rush. So I'm having fun. I do miss being up there, and I love having fans scream and yell and clap for me, or us, but you know how it is. It's like, but at the same time, it's like, man, I love making my family shine and let them rock, and just letting the audience just enjoy their musicianship and the glory of how great and wonderful they are, so it's an honor for me to play any kind of role, and I'm going back. I'll be on guitar in Japan. I was actually looking forward to mixing over there because the engineers in Japan are amazing, and that's one of the reasons why I'm stepping back and hopping on guitar solo. Who has been playing guitar in my place. He had a previous engagement, so unfortunately he's not able to go. But it'd be fun for me. I mean, I'll get back on stage and rock it in Japan. I know all the fans of these venues. They come out to see us every year for the past 20 years. I'm like their family, So it's going to be fun. It's going to be a little, it's always sad being away from family during the holidays. I mean, that's the sucky part. But we're going to celebrate Christmas a little early, and I'll be home for New Year's, I think. So, yeah.
Well, a huge compliment to you. And I didn't realize this, but I was saying when we were at Pappy and Harriet's, I was saying this sounds as good, if not better, than the album. And and when I was there, and I was like, I haven't ever experienced that before with a concert, because generally the concert, the songs, the person plays, and you're like, you already know the song, so there's forgiveness in it. Yeah. But when I remember turning, we were standing up there. I was actually standing with Spike, and I was like, they sound so damn good. Like, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was blown away, but I didn't realize all that goes into that part. Like when you were talking about pushing up the faders for the thing. I mean, is this an active thing? Are you, like, when you're in front of the house, are you watching for the part in the song and you're actually moving?
Oh, yeah.
No way.
There's bass drops, like our bass player does, where I take that fader, the bass fader, and ride it up on that part, back down, vocals, speeches up on this part. And also I have to listen to how hard they're pushing, because some nights they're more tired than others. Sometimes Speech is singing way louder one night, way softer the next night, because he's maybe a little more tired. So I have to make up for that gain, so I have to create the blend. I have to get the vocals over the band. I have to EQ them so that they're intelligible. One Love and Speech they're both extremely capable of rapping very fast, so very quickly. So I want the audience to understand every word. So if it's masked by low end, it's like, who wants that? We've heard that in videos where we've seen shows where, like, what was the sound guy thinking? I'm like, oh my God, or Tasha's coming in with her glorious soulful parts on Tennessee, or Fishing for Religion, or Give 'Em That Fish, where she's doing all this like soul singing, like, all these runs, these gorgeous runs, and it's just behind the band. It's like, it's just kind of a background part. They think, oh, she's a background vocalist and Speech is the lead vocalist. No, they both play different roles at different times. Sometimes Speech is doing background vocal parts. When he's allowing someone else to shine and do their parts, he's doing background vocal parts. Yes, he is the band leader, and he is, the producer, but at the same time, it's like the show, it's supposed to be, cohesive, and I want everybody heard. I want the vocals to blend and sound like it's, like it's a produced record, like
Yeah.
they're harmoniously glued together, the four vocalists, and then same with the band, like, you got to get the bass guitar and the kick right. Some people try to get the kick too big and then it stomps on the bass guitar. Some people try to do the bass too big and then there's no low end from the kick punch cutting through. So there's all this, it's a fine balance. I'm writing faders all night. Our backing tracks are EQ'd differently. They're different levels. I'm writing some rooms, different rooms respond different ways. So I have to find the threshold of where the PA is going to crap out, and I back it back down, see what my threshold is, and then see where it is when the room fills up with bodies. Now it just sounds different. There's less reflections. Humidity changes frequency, the way frequencies travel. So the more humidity you have in the air, higher frequencies travel much more clearly, much more further. When you have lower humidity, low end travels further and the high end is diminished at distances. So you're always having to factor in humidity, weather, wind. Wind can cause sound fractures in different places at festivals. So you got to walk around, you got to listen, at different spots and compensate for that any way you can. So it's a constant shifting of vibrations and frequencies from all the way from the lowest end of the spectrum all the way to the top. You got to cut out harsh frequencies. So, because when the vocalists start digging in, like the microphones, if you don't notch out the offensive frequencies, you could rip people's heads off. I'm responsible for people's hearing too. Like I could damage people. Like I could damage people's hearing.
Really?
If I wanted to. Yeah, sound men, you've heard feedback, you've heard frequencies. If you don't cut certain frequencies, you could permanently damage people in the audience for the rest of their lives. So seriously, sound men have a very responsibility. I do like to mix loud, but as I do that, I'm removing all the frequencies that are damaging to the ears, like in the upper mids. I'm removing them so that I can bring the volume up so it hits you in the chest and feels good. It feels loud and powerful, but without hurting. You wanted to feel warm. I wanted to feel like you're enveloped by them. Like when I first put my headphones on to listen to My Girl when I was like 5 years old, like I want people to feel that live, like just enveloped with every instrument and vocal just all around you, and just hugging you and moving you to the beat and making you feel that, And when you got musicians like what you saw, Will, Rick, and Johnny, and Solo, and Farida, and Tasha, and Speech, and One Love, like they're top of the top, as far as I'm concerned. So it's an absolute joy to pull up their instruments in these giant PAs and let them ring out in front of thousands of people. I'm like, how awesome is that? Feel that bass, Rick's bass. It's a rush, It's awesome. I love it. You can tell I love it.
Well, it's incredible. I think that every person that goes to a concert now, like I didn't realize that. That's just, that part just blew my mind. I'm going to say a term that a lot of people aren't going to understand depending on generation, but I'm going to say rewind because now you could just scrub back. You could push the place where you want to go. But I'm saying rewind. Let's go back to that part of you going to that club and seeing Big Daddy Kane, because this was a pinch me moment probably for you. You see him when you're a kid, and then you're doing music with him. Not only talk to me about that part, but also the pinch me moments along the way. And at the
we did a song with Chuck D. We did a song with Chuck D too. I was in a video with him called Hip Hop Saves Lives. I was on set with him, dancing next to him on set. The first time I met him was on set for a video we were shooting together. So I'm trying to look cool. I'm up the white boy I'm dancing next to Chuck D and Speech and Farida. Farida's up there just all like doing her Atlanta dance and like crushing it and One Love. And I'm just like, okay, I'm just a guitar player and this, but hey, Speech asked me to be involved, and I was like, I'm honored. I'd be here if in any way I could bring any kind of positive influence and whatever to the video, to the song. But it's a trip, going in there and meeting him, but that's been happening now for 20 something years. Like I've met, Eddie Grant, Ziggy Marley, and like so many legends that I grew up listening to. And, we're going to see Big Daddy Kane, and I think Cleveland. We're doing a show with him December 14th at the is it the Hard Rock maybe? anyways, it's a classic hip hop night. And there's gonna be like Talib Kweli's gonna be there. There's gonna be other classic hip hop. Kwame,
Yes.
it's gonna be on the bill. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, it's to be able to
JJ. What was
you know,
the
we met
first
we
pitch
met Robert. We got to meet Robert Plant. I'm sorry to cut.
Ooh.
Robert Plant. I'm hanging out with Robert Plant in Morocco. Like, and it was the day. It was a kind of a, I know, right? It was a weird day because it was the same day Michael Jackson died. So it was surreal because me and the band were like, oh my God, MJ. Like, we grew up with MJ. And then we arrive, and after, we arrive in Casablanca, and we take a 5-hour drive through Morocco, Northern Africa, through the desert. And we finally arrive in our little village that they're having this festival we're playing, and the promoter comes over. He's like, hey, welcome. He goes, so by the way, Robert Plant's here, and he wants to meet you. And I was like, wait, Robert Plant, like the Robert Plant? And he's like, yeah. He's like, he's here, and he's staying here. He's in town for the festival. And I'm like, oh my, you gotta be kidding me. So we're all trying to get back to the hotel, because we're trying to find out what's happening with Michael Jackson. So now we're having this sad moment. I'm having this elation now. And like, remember I was talking about the bipolar earlier? This is musician life. But, and then, so we went to our hotel, checked in, got freshened up. And then the guy from the festival, he's like, all right, let's go. We walked over to down through these little tunnel ways in this Moroccan city, all the street vendors with the bread and the fruit and the spices. And we take this turn down this little alley, and there's no sign. Like, I'm looking for a hotel, and we're walking through like these little Arabic like, Northern African, like, bungalow buildings that aren't very high, maybe a few stories. And we go through this tunnel, and we get to this green door, and the guy like knocks on the door, and someone opens it, and there's this older couple, and they're the owners of the hotel. It turns out the hotel has one room per floor, and there's like 7 floors. And Robert had the 7th floor, the top floor, overlooking the ocean. What ocean is that? That's the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah.
Over there. And there's like old forts, like old cannons from the fortresses they used to have on the beach there that are still there. And his bed is all messed up. You can see where he was sleeping, and he wasn't there. But the guy brought us into his room. He's like, all right, y'all wait here. Robert's on his way back. So we're all standing and like out on his patio of his hotel room, and he basically had them go get us, bring us to his hotel room. And we're standing on the roof of his outdoor patio, and he comes walking up with his assistant. His shirt's all wet. He was down at the beach. His hair's kind of wet. He's all kind of red from the sun, from being down at the beach. And he's got like shorts on and like flip flops. And man, I just like gave him a big hug. He hugged me back, and it was like, we all hugging everybody, and we took pictures. And I was the one that related to them most, because the rest of the band are, they're aware of a Led Zeppelin, but they didn't grow up with Led Zeppelin like I did. Yeah. So we're talking about blues. Robert was a big blues aficionado. So I'm like, man, I played with Taj Mahal back in the day. He's like, Taj Mahal? He's like, that was our first tour in America, was opening up for Taj Mahal in 68 or 69. And he's like, and then we're talking about all these blues artists that I played with, and that he used to listen to on the radio, and then he toured with that, and it was like, oh, it was just so cool, so surreal. And it was right when he was started working with Alison Krauss. That the bluegrass vocalist, she plays violin, beautiful vocalist. And they did that Raising Sands album that was just brilliant. And that record inspired me and my wife for like our solo, our stuff that we do together. My wife's a musician too.
Yeah.
And so we covered one of the songs on that record, but it was cool just getting to meet him and just joke around with him. He was making jokes about Jimmy Page and trying to get the band back together. And, so we saw him that day. And then the next day, my gear didn't show up. The airlines lost my pedal board and my guitar. Uh-huh. So it was one of those gigs where I was playing drums and guitar. And so I had to borrow a guitar from one of the other guitar players in the hotel that was staying there, from one of the other bands. And I brought it to sound check, and it had like super heavy gauge strings on there, and the action was real high. And it was just like, it felt awful, And anyways, about 20 minutes before we're going on to the main stage for our set for the main night we're headlining, Robert Plant comes back. So the next day we're seeing Robert again. He comes back in our dressing room. He's like, hey, he's like, I came, he goes, you didn't see me. I was in disguise, but I was at your sound check and, you know, really enjoyed it. And I'm thinking, you were at my sound check. It was like one of the worst sound checks for me. I was embarrassed because I couldn't get this guitar in tune, and it was just deplorable. I got to play drums. The drums sounded fine, but I couldn't get guitar work in. And our sound checks are like, you know, we're just beating on stuff, getting levels and checking things, not performing, you know. So when he said that, I was just like, oh, I was a little deflated. But he was like, man, I just wanted to come back here to wish you a great show. He's like, I can't stay. I have to meet this other artist tonight, and I just wanted to apologize. I really wanted to stay for you. So to me, I was like, oh, that was really nice of him to do that. He didn't have to come all the way over to our tent and wish us a good show and say, listen, I really wanted to be here, but I couldn't. I'm going to be over here. So he let us know. He communicated, you know. It was just like, my man, this dude's cool. So I love that. That's my story with Robert. But I was horrified he was at sound check because I didn't see that. And I remember the whole time I was frustrated. I was hating that day so bad.
How does it feel for you to now be in that iconic state where musicians, young musicians, or even seasoned musicians, if they come in the room with you, it's like they're walking into your room with the cannons, looking over the stuff, and they're freaking out. How does that feel? Or do you understand? Like, do you understand that, JJ? Do you understand that the musicians, like, say for instance, I'm sitting here and I had a similar experience. I mean, obviously that's Robert Plant. That's like, you know, but I had a similar experience when I met you when I went to Pappy and Harriet's. Like, I'm sitting with an icon, you know, an iconic person, but Robert Plant just showed himself as a person. Do you see yourself? Do you understand that part of it? Does the gravity hit you?
Yeah, being the human side of it, you mean? You know, just being down to earth and.
Well, no, I mean, but the gravity part of it, of saying, like, you know, if I bring a young musician and they come in your presence, they're going to have that same story that you're talking about. You were talking like you were a 6-year-old child, you know, so excited to meet Robert Plant. Do you realize that people do that?
Well,
about
it depends on. It depends. I mean, there are times where it's more obvious. Like Japan, there's a lot more of the starstruck vibe. Like when we're doing the autograph signings after the shows, there are a lot the Japanese fans who I love and adore. They're so like they're shaking. You know, when they're shaking your hand, and sometimes they're crying, you know, well, they're crying in front of us on stage. And I've seen them, you know, shake my hand, and you know, and they're just kind of trembling of nervousness. And of course they're a little nervous too, because you know, a lot of them don't speak that great English, but a lot of them do. Right? But then I've seen people just bust out crying right when Speech is sitting right next to me. We're signing T-shirts and posters and CDs, and he just shakes someone's hand and says, hi. You know, thanks for coming. And they're just like, ah! And they just start crying because they're just so overwhelmed. We're like, it's like, okay, you know, it's like, calm down, you know. But you know, it's beautiful, but it's like, wow, you know, you do have that power. And, you know, we've all seen that classic footage of the Beatles and the girls screaming or you know, just the franticness of, you know, of that and the Michael Jackson footage of like the fans just passing out. And you know that they've you know, in some of those Japanese venues where they literally the staff at the venue has to form a human barrier, lock arms, so that we could get from the stage to the dressing room, because they're you know, they're pushing up to, and there's no like railing, like it's just like a restaurant bar, you know. But at the same time, we got to get through the people to get to the stage. So a lot of times, you know, they have to form literally human barriers so that we walk through. And you know, it's kind of it's exciting, but at the same time, you know, it's like, wow, it's like now you see how like things could so easily get out of hand. It's, you know, metal shows or hip hop shows where, you know, all that angst and excitement, you know, if you're not channeling it for good, you know, somebody pushes you the wrong way or steps on your girlfriend's foot or spills beer on your new kicks, you know, a fight could happen, you know, somebody's drinking too much. And
Yeah.
you know, combined with all this excitement. You know, I remember when Guns N' Roses was opening up for Motley Crue in like '88 when the Appetite for Destruction album came out, and they were climbing the charts, but weren't up there yet. And they were the opening act in Atlanta. You know, Axl Rose is like, he saw some dude in the audience like did something. Said something, dude said something back, and Axl just threw the mic down, just dove off the stage. They had to stop the show. It was just like all this angst, you know. The show stops and they kick him out, and then they ended up like the band played for a few more minutes, and then they just left. And then Motley Crue came. They were like, all right, we're changing sets. You know, it's just like, you know, it's like, oh, you never know what could happen. You know, my experience I was talking about earlier when that fight broke out, and my mom was 15 years old. My first gig, it's like people get excited at shows. You know, they need to calm down. But no, I love passionate. You know, I love it when people are passionate about music, and we love that. Like, you know, the release that people feel and get when they sing along to our songs and they participate with all the, you know, all the parts that we do live. I mean, it's a workout. Arrested Development show. It's like, you got to bring some comfortable shoes and stretch out before you know, maybe bring a sweat towel because we're gonna put you to work. Like, we don't want people sitting down. Like, we want you to be involved on your feet. It's organic. We're in this. We're partying together. It's a hip hop party and celebration. It's a life celebration.
Oh yeah.
Of, you know. So.
Well, it's incredible, man. Take me to that Chuck D. Take me to the Chuck D and to the Big Daddy Kane, because those ones. I mean, when I saw the song,
we've done shows with De La Soul. We've done shows with them, Macy Gray. We've done like so many killer shows with the Jackson 5. Well, it wasn't the Jackson 5. It was like the Jackson 3 at the time.
Okay.
But we got to hang out with the Jacksons in South Africa. You know, I went to me and Paz and a couple of the Jacksons in speech, went to Soweto. We went to the village and to basically a little place where there was a lot of orphans. There was an orphanage. So they had all these little babies there, these grandmas changing their diapers. And, you know, and I remember, you know, Paz holding a little girl, me holding a little, you know, we're all holding these little beautiful children, you know, that have been abandoned, you know. And you're just like, your heart. You know, having this experience with them, you know, we're all holding these babies. We're all thinking, man, we could take a baby home and like she would live a better life, or he would live a better life with us. Like, we were all thinking it, you know. We're like, it was the first time I won. First time I was like, man, I maybe I can adopt. You know, I know it's expensive and a long process, but it was the first time I was like, you know, I wonder if maybe we can, you know, start contemplating adoption at one point, you know.
Yeah.
But it was amazing, you know, experiencing that with them, you know. Anyways, but I'm sorry to cut you off. Yeah, but with
underappreciated,
Big Daddy
how
Kane
underappreciated is Paz? Like, how underappreciated is that guy in hip hop? Yeah,
absolutely. And I love the fact that over the years, people tried to get him to do a solo album, and he was just like, "Nah, I'm good. I'm just gonna stick with my band." You know, I'm like, because he could do a solo album, it'd be dope. I know it would be super dope. You know. But that's not what he wanted to do, which is just great. You know, good for him. Let him do what he wants. You know, but yeah, I agree with you about that. You know, being underrated. So yeah, those guys are cool. But watching them, like, so we were standing on the side of the stage watching them rock the South African festival, Delicious Festival, and oh man, they performed. It was like, I don't know, like 1:30 in the afternoon. The sun was out, but it wasn't too hot. But it was hot, but not too hot. And the crowd was just on fire, rocking with them, and you know, it was amazing, yeah. So, and then it was cool to see them on the side of the stage, you know, when we're rocking a show, come out and rocking to us, you know, seeing Talib over there, and you know, and he's filming us, like, yeah, y'all are killing it, you know. It's like,
that would be JJ. It would be rough to follow you guys, because the energy that you bring from every aspect, from, you know, when you're talk about the musicality part, the lyricist part. This is what I was talking to Speech about the last time when he was on, is the ability as far as just pure rhyming. One Love. I mean, on you guys' last album, unreal. Yeah. I mean,
I love having him over the studio and recording him. Like, it's just fun to work with. It's so fun. Yeah. You go on. Yeah.
Well, it restored my faith in hip hop. Adult contemporary hip hop
Yeah.
did.
Mhm.
I was
That's what's
saying
up.
I had I turned 50 this year, and it was tough. I mean, this year has been it's been different. And the song, when I heard the song, um, my job ain't done.
Yeah.
And when I heard that, it was an anthem for me, saying, this isn't like, you're not on the downside of life, 50, and then downside, your job ain't done. And so listening to that anthem over and over again, but it really restored it honestly, JJ, like it restored um, my faith in hip hop. It was, I think every single person, I think it's a masterclass. And I think that everybody should have that whole album on full rotation. And this is my compliment to you, is that I did not skip one song.
Yeah.
How'd you feel when you guys were making it?
Man, we do it in, we've been working with Configure now for a couple of years, and he's been sending us like just this dopest beats, and to feel the synergy when like Speech or One Love hears those tracks and responds to them with what they're going through in life. It's like a lot of what they're rapping about, is like true stories. Certain songs that, not all of them, but there's certain songs where I know the backstory, where like that really happened. That's actually a real story, and there's other parts where like, this is fiction. It's just a story that's inspired by the song, but as it's happening, you don't know how much of an impact it's going to have. It's dope, and you love it because you want to love what you do, and that's why we write our songs, because we want to write something that we love, and we're inspired to get that out, and but yeah, I don't know how to explain it. It's going through that particular record, Speech sent me some stuff to master. It had already been pre-mixed. A lot of times I'll mix stuff and master it. And some of the Speech's songs I mixed and mastered. The Configure stuff he mixed, and then some of them I mastered, some of them he mastered. I can't remember all the songs, but I had a role in that. And just, I remember pulling up the songs. Like some of the songs I didn't work on yet, so I was hearing them for the first time, before it was released, to master it. And I remember pulling it up in my studio. I got my speakers right here, so that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
I got four sets of speakers here and a keyboard and all this crazy stuff, and I remember pulling up and just hearing those beats, and then what Speech was saying now, and saying and singing, and then One Love's contribution, and then just the way their styles contrast, and then all the guests that we have flowing in and out, that it feels like such a cohesive record. Even though we have so many guests and like different vibes on it, it's still like super cohesive, but it's soulful, and it really gives you that old school hip hop feel that feels good and raw and punchy, and but at the same time it's still fresh. Like, yeah, it feels retro, but a lot of people love that. People love a retro sound in modern times. Amy Winehouse did it. There's a lot of artists that do that. And then a lot of people who try to sound modern and futuristic end up just sounding like the 80s.
Yeah.
So so you got to be careful how you choose your sounds and stuff. But yeah, I'm looking forward to what Speech is going to write next, what we're going to do next. Like,
Yeah.
Will Montgomery, Configure contributed a lot to the record, obviously, but actually Will Montgomery, our drummer, who you saw, remember I was telling you he's a wicked bass player and keyboardist. He produced Overachiever. There's a song called Overachiever. He produced that track. I think Still Fired Up is another song. I think he did that one as well. I love his tracks too. And because I know his sensibility, I know his sense of humor, I know how he is as a dad, as a roommate. We've roomed so many times on cruises and hotels, and, so to hear his legitimate, like, just banging beats that he produced, and then Ishi sings on and Speech raps on and One Love rap, it's just so cool, the synergy that happens between us, because we're family and we all get along well. Like, we were just at a venue recently, and somebody that worked there was the sound man. It was the Clooney in Newcastle, UK. When we were hanging out before sound check, all the band members, we all circled up chairs around the coffee and the little food. And we were all sitting together talking. It was the morning. It was afternoon. It was morning for us, afternoon for them. We're getting ready to do sound check, but we still had some couple hours to kill. And the sound guy's like, y'all actually sit together and talk? Like, he was mind blown that we even got along. He's like, all the bands that I do, they come in and like 3 members run into that room and they lock the door, and the other 2, they're arguing, and then they split up, and then nobody's talking to anybody, and then they come out on stage for sound check and they go, check 1 2 1 2, and then they yell at each other and they're all pissed off and pissy and throwing stuff around, and then they leave. He's like, you guys actually, seems like y'all actually like each other. I'm like, yeah, we're family. Like, we're doing what we love. All of us are family. We always got each other's backs, and and it's like a church, really. I mean, it's essentially what it is, like a small church.
Yeah.
It's music is we're not doing church songs, like, but it's a form of worship. I mean, the grooves and the notes and the heart behind what we're doing is a celebration, but it's also worship. Tennessee is a prayer. The song Tennessee. That if you don't know the backstory behind how that song was written, go look it up, because that is a painful song, but it's sung in a way that is joyful and freeing, even though it's also longing and crying out to God. It's a song about pain, but that's music, that's art. It's conflicting. It could be sad lyrics when you think about it, but the way it's sung is kind of in a happy, joyful, celebratory way. But when you start thinking about the lyrics, you're like, oh my God, that's so tragic. You're like, oh my God, that's heavy. Like,
when Speech broke it down for me when he was on, and he said, my grandma's passed, my brother's gone, I never ever felt so alone. When he said that, for the first time, I sat in the lyrics, because like you said, it's a very melodic song. It's a very, I would almost say, an anthem-ish kind of song, like that everybody is like, oh my God, it's Tennessee, and you're just going. But when he stopped and he told me those lyrics, and he was like, my grandma had just passed, my brother, boom, he was gone.
They both died in the same week.
Yeah.
They both died. So the last place he saw both of them was in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
That's how he wrote the song. And the record label wanted to release a different song first. He insisted that was the first single, and glad he did, because it ended up being a big hit for the band, but
top
but it was
500 of all time too, right?
Yeah. There you go.
And what blew me away too, and most people didn't know this part of it, and I didn't know it before we got to, but that it was Prince that was the hook, like that it was Alphabet Street.
Yeah.
Man.
Whoa.
Yeah, that stuff blew me away. Tell me about Fire and Knife.
It's basically like a acoustic rock, Americana vibe. It's a duo that me and my wife have. She's a singer-songwriter. She's actually distant cousins with Dolly Parton. My wife's maiden name is Parton. All her family's from Sevierville, Tennessee, where the Partons all come from, big line of Partons. And anyways, so she's an amazing vocalist and songwriter herself. It's kind of like we laugh and we call her the Asian hillbilly, because her mom, her daddy's from Tennessee, her mom's from Thailand. Her parents met at the tail end of Vietnam.
Okay.
And so she's mixed, and she's a great guitarist, rhythm guitarist. She's got this beautiful Gibson Hummingbird, and we've been gigging together for 20 something years. So when I'm not on the road with Arrested Development, I've been trying to just gig with her as much as possible every weekend, really. Recently we've taken a slight break. I've taken a step back and letting her not have to work as much, just to let her enjoy life after the death of her father, and just kind of work through all that. And we've been going through these changes and readjusting. Had a lot of work done on the house, and just want to let her relax and breathe, and not be less stressed during this time. And so we haven't been gigging as much. We also wanted to be more choosy in the future with our gigs. So we're working on a record right now. She's written songs. We just got a record them, figure out how we want to record them. So that's what we've been
Okay.
brainstorming on. But yeah, Fire and the Knife. I was inspired by Earth, Wind and Fire. I grew up, with those records. My dad had those records, and I always loved the elements. And many years ago, when we were thinking of a name for the band, one day I was just reading the Bible in Genesis, and in chapter 26, where Abraham's gonna. I don't know if you know the story, but he's going to sacrifice his son.
Oh yeah.
And they're walking, and it says he himself carried the fire and the knife. Like he was carrying basically the stuff for the sacrifice, So he was going to use that knife to kill his son, and the fire and all, So to me, it reminded me of Earth, Wind and Fire, but also it was kind of biblical, and I was like, man, that's kind of deep too, and it's kind of edgy. And we were starting kind of do like a pop rock band, and we were. At the time, we were more like a progressive rock band when we first started. And then we put out that record just called Nanya Na. We didn't call it Fire and the Knife. We actually changed the name because we did an inner city event. Our church asked us to go play for some of the inner city kids in Atlanta for this like fundraiser. And we're just going to encourage the kids. And the host of the event, he came backstage. He's like, he was about to bring us out. He's like, I'm about to introduce y'all. And he goes, and I'm realizing Fire and the Knife just sounds so violent, and maybe we could change y'all's name. And we're like, what? Like, and I'm thinking, like, that's kind of racist, man. I'm like, they'll be fine. They're Atlanta kids. I'm like, yeah, whatever. So we submitted to the dude. We were like, okay, whatever. Just call us whatever you want. So he was like, Nanya Na and her band, and we played our set and we had a good time. But in one sense, it did make me think, well, maybe it's not a good name. So we named that first record after my wife. Like there's Santana. Yeah. He's Carlos Santana. He's the artist, and we call the band Santana. All the records are released under Santana. I was thinking, let's do the same with my wife, Nanya Na. We'll just have Nanya Na. The band is called Nanya Na, and she's the featured vocalist. That's what I was thinking. And then we started that fizzled out, and then we started kind of doing more organic stuff or acoustic, and sometimes I bring my telly, but I started, it's like, what, let me hone in on my acoustic skills, because that's, guys like Jimmy Page I love because he could rip on an electric, but he could also do this beautiful acoustic stuff too, same with like Charlie Starr with Blackberry Smoke and the modern southern rock sense or rock and roll sense. Like he could shred on he could just rip these rock riffs on his electric, but he could sit down and just do beautiful old timey picking on his old Gibson acoustic. It's just, but I never had developed the acoustic skills. So over the years, really my soloing skills and my acoustic skills all developed under Fire and the Knife. My pocket skills and arrangement skills and doing a routine developed with Arrested Development. With Arrested Development, we got to improvise here and there, but over the years it got less and less because we're writing so many songs. So we're always introducing these songs. So we can't, parts of our live part of the show are there's not as much. So it's more, we're trying to get new people to hear the new songs. So we're doing our routines, which is still rock and it's still fun, but it's just a different element. With my wife's band, I'm soloing every song. Like I'm taking a solo sometimes, several times through the chord progression because we're playing in front of people. That's part of the experience, and then when I'm done soloing, we come out. But with Arrested Development, we only have an hour and 15, hour and a half. With Fire and the Knife, we're playing 3 hours, wow. sometimes 4 hours, depending on the gig, so that's like local gig work. Poor local musicians they play a lot longer. And and that's the thing over the years, this is one of the things that kept me, I feel like, tied to my roots, is that I never stopped gigging in the smaller places when I come home from tour development. I still go out and gig in the little cafes with my wife and be among people. A lot of times people have no idea where I've been, where I was the night before, rocking a big, staying in the same hotel as the king of Morocco, that kind of thing. And then the next night I'm back just playing a little, barbecue place with my wife, and playing for some families, because it just keeps me spiritually centered. It just keeps me grateful for, and I love music. I don't care where I play it. I remember years ago thinking, I remember praying to God, like, God, if you want me to be a professional musician, then please make it happen But if you don't want me to be a professional musician, I promise I'll be content with just playing music at, on the weekends or at church or just in my home, because I love music that much. I'll be happy just playing. But I wanted to be a professional musician. I had a part-time job. After playing that, after getting my heart right, and I've said that prayer, pretty soon after that is when really speech is like, okay, I need you to go on the road with me. Like, and that's when I started making the transition from being a part-time, like, semi-pro to full-time pro, and that was like 2005 is when it really started shifting like full-time, doing it for real, even though I'd already been working with speech since 98, but it was just, here and there, helping him out and doing stuff here and there. And then when he really needed me, like, okay, I need you to be here all the time doing this, I'm like, okay, that was 2005, so, the rest is history, and we're still making history, as you can hear with the new record.
Well, so, I tell you, JJ, I started the podcast because of my two kids, and it was because Maddox at 14 and McKenna at 16, and Maddox plays sports and is into fishing and doing all this stuff. My daughter is into singing, performing. We just got her a keyboard, so now she's starting to. She's starting to plug on it a little bit, and I want her to do it more. I got to see her at open mic last night, but I started it because I didn't want them to worship idols. I just wanted them to be inspired by iconic people like yourself, and I wanted to expose like my daughter to you. And I was bragging about you last night to her to her class at the open mic, because I was saying, guys, you got to understand, tomorrow I'm going to spend time with one of the most legendary and iconic musicians in our time and in my generation. But he's a human being. So what advice would you have for Maddox and McKenna? And if you could call yourself Uncle JJ, it would be awesome.
Kenna and Maddox? Is that what you said?
McKenna and Maddox. McKenna and Maddox.
McKenna and Maddox. Yeah, McKenna and Maddox. Yeah, Uncle JJ would definitely tell you, if you love music, if you really love it, practice it every day. Nurture your talent. If God gave you a talent, if you have this talent and you love it, nurture it and don't let anything else get in the way of that. Practice every day. Play as much as you can every day, and play with other people. Learn as much as you can. Never feel like you've learned enough or everything, because music is so expansive. There's so many different styles and genres that you can be inspired by and influenced by, that the more you play with other people who are better than you, the better you will get, the more confidence you will get. You'll develop a language. Music is a language, so you have to learn the scales, learn the chords, the notes, and do it daily. Stay off the video games, or at least reduce the amount of time on them. I have to say that as a father as well. No, yes. But but just the most important thing is to have fun. Just have fun, because that's what it's all about. If you're not having fun, don't do it. Do something else, But it's all about having fun, and don't take yourself too seriously. Although you do want to take yourself seriously if you're wanting to put a product out. Like if YouTube, if you feel like you want to write your own song, definitely take it seriously. Put your heart into it. Make it as pretty or as angry or as beautiful or as rock or wherever you have it in your heart you want it to be. Make it that, and study other artists who have done it. And you could listen to what I call a reference. You could listen to one of your favorite artists and a production that you like. Listen to that. I like the drum beat on this song. I want to do something like that maybe on my song, but change it up a little bit, Be original, but allow yourself to be influenced by other people.
JJ, you're incredible. Take us out with the Big Daddy Kane and Chuck D. We went through the stuff. We started to talk about it a little bit, but these two, we got to see. It was LL, De La Soul, Public Enemy, and I'm dying. There was one other one that we saw. And we saw him at the Hard Rock in Vegas. It was for my birthday. There was a festival, and they were playing. And we're in line for a cab. My buddy Will, best friend in the world since 4th grade, he grew up on hip hop, huge fans. And we're in the taxi line, and Chuck D just comes walking across, but he's by himself. It's right after the concert. He's walking by himself. And at the time, nobody reacts. But me and my buddy are like, holy, it's Chuck D.
Oh, yeah.
It's Chuck D. And then,
Yeah.
so I this is at the time when you have a regular camera. I had a regular camera with me. I was like, hey, Chuck, I apologize. I don't want to bother you. But he was so gracious, took a picture with me and my friend. And it was crazy because the woman behind us that took the picture was like, who was that? I was like, are you joking? That was Chuck D. Like, you know what I'm saying? Take us out with Chuck D and Big Daddy.
Well, Chuck D, just hearing his voice on Hip Hop Saves Lives, the new song we did, was so surreal because it's so rich and deep. It's an iconic voice, and you hear him. He raps with so much authority, even when he's rapping in a kind of a little bit more laid back version of himself. But when I went and met him and I shook hands, and he already, he knew who I was, but I'm still like, hey, I'm JJ Boogie, and he's like, yeah, no, because he follows the band. He's friends with Speech. He sees our clips, and he's liked my tweets and stuff too, and but I don't realize that he, sometimes I don't think, oh, he notices me sometimes or whatever. But hearing his voice in person was just so, because he's got this resonance to him that's deep. And to hear it in person as I was shaking his hand was just so powerful. I'm like, man, no wonder, like, he sounds like that for real. It's like, that's not a studio trick. Like, that's him. Like, his personality, that's who he is, like, in real life, and that on the record. Like, what you see is what you get. That's what I got from him. Now with Big Daddy Kane, even though we were in the same video together, I wasn't on set at the same time he did his shoot. So I filmed in the video vibe. I filmed my parts separately than the date. So unfortunately, I missed him on that day. But I got to see him live when I was a kid, and he rocked my world. His dance routine, the energy. I mean, the seeing the crowd respond to not only his voice too, who's got a rich voice, but his powerful, explosive dancing, jumping over people in splits, and he still does all that at his age, so, Arrested Development, we have a lot of dance is very heavily featured from Ishi, the original dancer who did all the African dance and was just beautiful, elegant, like her Ishi's mother, Mama Gaither, she was a dance instructor, like in the 60s and 70s, had her own dance school. So she taught Ishi. Ishi was like kind of classically trained as well as bringing all the African stuff, so, and then Farida taking on, that mantle and doing her spin on, the dance. It's like dance, there's choreography. So there's always, everything is moving at all times. And so it's just a lot of high energy. And I love that about Big Daddy Kane's show too. It's like, it's a lot of body movement, he's like, you're going to get worn out, the show. So we're doing a show with him, like I said earlier, in Cincinnati on the 14th. So check the AD, the band website for that. And there's several hip hop artists going to be on that bill as well. It's going to be fun.
Well, I tell you, everyone out there that's listening, if you ever get the chance to see AD live, I mean, they're one of the most iconic groups of our generation, but they will take it to a completely other level. Your appreciation for not only performance, but the music, the everything. I did have one other thing is Mr. C. He's my daughter's choir teacher. And he always talks about, like, when they do the performance, he's like, this is my dream job. He spends time with the kids. He, lifts them up vocally. He lifts them up as far as the choreography. The arts is very underfunded, as we both know, right? But what would be something that you would say to Mr. C as far as, like, I mean, he's doing it and he absolutely loves it. But maybe just some encouragement to him there at Carlsbad High, the choral.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Mr. C. I mean, first of all, thank you for teaching kids music, for educating them. Like, I remember Miss Hisbin, who taught me in my elementary school. Like, if it weren't for her, like, giving me bongos and a little recorder to blow in, like, we would sit in a circle and do rhythm drills, clapping and stuff with the bongos. And like, she was one of the instrumental as well. It's like, yes, my father introduced me to music, but also a teacher. And so I have the softest spot in my heart for her to this day, and always, will be. So I say that because, if you do your job right, you're going to have people like me that's going to remember Mr. C, like who encouraged me, to play this or play that or sing this or sing that or be the best that I could be. So thank you for what you're doing, teaching music and passing that on. I've taught guitar lessons and drum lessons over the years. I've had students, and I've been on and off with that, but I love teaching, and the kids who are passionate about learning, it's always such a joy to give to them and pass on that knowledge. So yeah, pass it on. God bless you.
JJ, I'm going to ask you something in front of a bunch of people that are listening and watching, which is I got to have you on the show more. I got to have you on more, man, because I feel like, we just scratched the surface, and you're an absolute genius, man. And even better than that for me, it's like through this podcast, I've got to meet my heroes, but my heroes have become human, and, they become friends. And I just, dude, my hat's off to you, man. You're way better than advertised, and you're advertised really, really good. Like really, 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 really good, man. And it's been an honor and a pleasure, man.
Thank you, brother. It's been an honor as well. Thank you. Yeah.
I would ask you too, is can you stick around for a second? We're gonna run the commercial here, but can you stick around just for a second after that is done?
Yeah.
Is that cool?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
JJ, I got to say this, that I appreciate you, and you're officially off the hot seat. Peace, love, and soul.
Yeah, and this the vibe that raised us, made us, saved us. Love so strong that the hard times praised us. From base life roots to the freeway nights, we turn small grooves into launch pad flights. Yeah, this the vibe that raised us, made us, saved us. Love so strong that the hard times praised us. From base life roots to the freeway nights, we turn small rooms into launch pad flights. We begun surfing waves too low, made our own rules everywhere we go. Held tight to the truth that our parents declared. Anything is possible, the love stayed there. Now Rob's daughter ballin' on the end scene, Olay scene. Will's kids live dreams we never could have seen. This the vibe that raised us, made us, saved us. Love so strong that the hard times praised us. From base life roots to the freeway nights, we turn small rooms into launch pad flights.